Hello and welcome back to this special episode of World 360. It has been 1 year since we began this show, which aimed to explain complex geopolitical issues from regions across the world that don't always make it to the headlines. In fact, in our very first episode, we explained the lesser-known sthans in Central Asia shortly after the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan. Since then, we've covered diplomatic spats, the global food crisis amid the Ukraine war, COVID-induced global semiconductor shortages, and more. But today, we're going to talk about 5 important events in international affairs to watch out for in the coming months. First, the 20th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party. India assumes the G20 Presidency later this year, the UN Climate Change Conference or COP27, the US midterm elections, as well as the 40th and 41st ASEAN Summits. So let's understand why these events are important and what far-reaching effects they could have. First up is the highly anticipated 20th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party, which begins on 16th October and will be held behind closed doors at the Great Hall of the People in central Beijing. Now, this meeting is held every 5 years, during which major leadership changes in the party are usually announced. This year is important because Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to start his unprecedented 3rd term. This is unprecedented because in the past, Chinese presidents haven't served longer than 2 terms. Now, if Xi does secure a 3rd, it will lay the ground for further consolidation of his power and cement his place as the country's most powerful leader since Mao Zedong. A 3rd term for Xi would have major implications for the world order. Through wolf warrior diplomacy, we've seen how China has become more assertive on the global stage, and we in India have witnessed its aggression on the ground in Ladakh. How to approach its rivalry with the US, how to tackle issues surrounding Taiwan, Xinjiang, and Tibet, as well as whether to embrace Russia amid the Ukraine war, will all be major questions for Xi Jinping going forward. It would also be interesting to see how Xi's China dream of great rejuvenation plays out, a term he first mentioned in 2012, which links China's economic progress as a global power with a sort of nostalgia for the country's past. This ties in with China's plans for national reunification with countries such as Taiwan. Next up is India's G20 Presidency. For the first time in its history, India will assume the presidency of the G20, a group that works to address major issues relating to the global economy. India will serve as president of the grouping from 1st December 2022 until 30th November 2023, culminating with the G20 Summit in New Delhi next year. India enters this presidency, however, at a time when the global economy is still reeling from the pandemic and has been stifled due to the effects of the Ukraine war, such as a global oil crisis, a global food crisis, and rising inflation in different parts of the world. Europe is expected to go into a recession, and the US economy is expected to take a downturn as well. Many Asian countries such as Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan have also seen a dip in forex reserves, forcing them to reach out to the IMF for bailouts. All in all, India has its work cut out for itself. Now, its priorities as the G20 president will mainly be bolstering global economic growth and setting it on a sustainable path, as well as focusing on global food security, climate financing, energy security, and digital public infrastructure. It will also be interesting to see how India addresses discord within the G20, given the US had led a boycott of speeches by Russian delegates at the group's meeting in April to protest Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. Now, the third event to look out for is, of course, the UN's annual Climate Change Conference, or COP27, which will take place from 6th to 18th November 2022 in Egypt. All eyes will be on Western countries and whether they will be able to make good on their Paris climate targets, given the renewed dependence on fossil fuels amid the Ukraine war. The latest science shows that climate change is moving much faster than expected, as evident in extreme weather events this year, such as Pakistan's floods and heat waves across Europe and parts of Asia. Countries in the past promised to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and implement climate solutions across all sectors to halve emissions by 2030. But amid a global energy crisis, greenhouse gas concentrations are only expected to increase going forward. To see how India, the world's third biggest emitter, is placed in the fight against climate change, climate journalist Aruna Chandrasekhar has published a comprehensive analysis of the Indian government's updated climate pledge under the terms of the Paris Agreement. She points out that some experts say India has done well to commit its fair share of the effort required to limit global warming, but others say it needs to pursue further cuts in emissions. Now, the fourth event to look out for is the US midterm elections. The US will go to midterm elections on the 8th of November this year. These are key elections because all seats in the House of Representatives and 1/3 of the seats in the Senate will be contested. These are known as the midterm polls as they occur halfway through a presidential term. And very often, these elections serve as a sort of referendum on the president itself. Currently, Democrats have control over the Senate and the House of Representatives, but not with large majorities. In fact, the Senate is split down the middle, while in the House of Representatives, Democrats hold 221 seats and Republicans hold 212. According to reports, Republicans stand a strong chance of taking control of the House of Representatives, while the Democrats are likely to retain the control of the Senate. Now, how would a Republican-led House of Representatives affect US President Joe Biden? For one, a Republican House would derail most legislation that Biden would want to enact. We've already seen how Republicans stalled many of Biden's appointments in the Senate, including his pick for the US ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti. As French think tank IRIS points out, a Republican House could derail federal spending, be it for sending arms to Ukraine, COVID-19 vaccines to the developing world, or beefing up US military presence in the Indo-Pacific and the South China Sea. Now, the final event to look out for is the 40th and 41st ASEAN Summit, which will begin on 10th November in Cambodia. Apart from discussions on global supply chain disruptions and rising inflation pressures in the region, Myanmar is sure to be a major topic at the upcoming summit. Recently, Malaysia's foreign minister urged ASEAN to act more decisively in response to the political and humanitarian crisis in Myanmar and reevaluate how the grouping interacts with the military junta there that forcibly took control of the country in February 2021. ASEAN's 5-point consensus, which has received a lot of criticism, is likely to be revamped, if not junked. Now, the 5-point consensus, introduced in August 2021, urged an immediate end to violence in Myanmar, appointment of a special envoy, provision of humanitarian assistance by ASEAN, and a visit by the bloc's special envoy to Myanmar to meet with all parties. But the consensus appeared toothless given the ongoing crackdowns and violence that continues in Myanmar. The ASEAN Summit is also likely to discuss the need for regional stability amid the US-China rivalry. In August, we saw how US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan was a headache for the bloc. ASEAN was quick to put out a statement urging all parties to exercise maximum restraint and refrain from provocative action that would only lead to regional volatility. There's also the Russia factor. Amid the Ukraine war, top Russian officials are expected to attend the upcoming ASEAN Summit in Cambodia. It's not exactly out of the ordinary given Putin attended the 2008 ASEAN Summit in Singapore and last year attended many ASEAN-related meetings virtually as well. But as a report in the Bangkok Post points out, Putin has sought to develop closer ties with ASEAN in recent years, and ASEAN looks to Russia for military and space-related technology. And there you have it, 5 things to watch out for in international politics. Thank you so much to all our viewers for your support and topic suggestions over the past year. This is Pia Krishnankutty. Do subscribe to The Print and follow us on social media.